Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us. My name is Russell Corris. I am the co-founder and CEO of Easy365 and our newest initiative, Easy NFT. And specifically, we're here today to talk about our Genesis series called Renaissance 2.0, where we try to bridge the gap between the physical, traditional art world and the world of NFTs on the digital side. And we do this by taking iconic physical art with credibility and standing in the traditional art world, and we pair that with incredible, uniquely commissioned one-of-one NFTs. And then the physical and the digital will be sold together. As well, every NFT in this series will be sold with a beautiful physical display from our friends at Infinite Objects so that collectors can properly admire and display their digital art the same way they do their physical art. Joining me today from Helsinki is Vesa Kivinen, an incredibly accomplished artist and somebody that I'm very proud to have as part of Renaissance 2.0. Vesa has been creating incredible digital art for over 20 years. So in a sense, he's been creating NFTs since before there existed a blockchain to put them on. Vesa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Russell. And I'm very privileged to be a part of your super cool project. And it's really giving me a chance to say something that's been bubbling for a long time and actually ties to my whole art career thus far, which could be described as potentially integral art.
It's very interesting. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history as an artist to this point.
I was originally a musician, and I use the term loosely because I didn't actually want to know the theory side of music. I wanted to be a rock star. So out of respect for those people who are real musicians, so to speak, I wasn't that, but rhythm and music was in my blood. And I started with that going into filmmaking, and I went to film school and I ran a production company for about a decade. And then out of part frustration, but also this natural tendency for me to want to evolve, I kind of came up with this process where I started body painting on people and telling their story, and then seeing how their story relates to the bigger overarching human story. And it's almost like an art piece doesn't feel like it's ready for me if it doesn't present the past, present, and future all at once. And that's something that was very much informed by this guy called Ken Wilber, who I started studying in my early 20s. And that's about 20 years ago now, who's an incredibly accomplished scholar and a philosopher, as well as he just knows the Eastern and Western traditions, both spiritually, politically, and psychology-wise and everything. And that's how he developed this thing called the integral theory. And it was a super hard thing to grasp in my early 20s, but I knew it was very worth it. And that has always informed of how I do creativity, let's say, after I became an adult. And that's ultimately, this ties into this artwork that we are now going to present to the world as well, that I'm super excited by.
That's amazing. You really created a phenomenal piece of art for this series. I can't wait to show it to the world. We'll be minting it very soon and it'll be on display. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration. I guess, what does Andy Warhol mean to you? How did you come up with the idea behind this piece, and what message are you trying to convey?
Okay, so going a little bit back, I mean, just to also maybe fill a little bit into the previous question, as in that, because not only in process, but of course in delivery, like becoming a digital artist in 2008, I've been hodling, so to speak, 350 museum grade sort of high resolution digital art pieces, and they've been made into now NFT cars. They're in this incredibly immersive studio that I have in Helsinki that we put together with a company called Coloro. And I've always, in terms of ideology or in terms of concepts, I've tried to push things not only ideas wise, like I did with this Bollywood actress, Miss Veena Malik. We kind of helped shape two cultures and evolved them at once with one project that reached about 300 million people in the process of it. So it's always multifaceted and always trying to push what is possible to make with some things. And in terms of philosophy and sort of all of these spiritual traditions that I've always had for a reason or another, a very keen sort of interest for, I started realizing that we have been in this, I call it the fiat era of art during the last 50 years. And it actually kind of started coincidentally, when Richard Nixon took out the gold standard from underneath the dollar, that's when Andy Warhol's factory really started kicking in. And this is why this is so appropriate that I've said in my keynotes for the past year or so, is that art has really been able to be, in a sort of more official sense, only pretty much fancy sort of maybe even slightly superficial things for the rich, as well as very narrow bandwidth political propaganda, let's say mostly of the left. And you leave out body painting and cave painting, which are arguably the most the oldest art forms in the world. That's how when we first crawled out of the primordial sludge, we tried to figure out what we do here and leave some sort of legacy or state, transform our state of consciousness. And I've been an avid listener and learner of ancient Egypt and a lot of these temples from India and South America, all over the world, and fascinated what our forgotten past might be like. And then you go to the Enlightenment period, you go to natural sciences, you go to this vast areas of life that haven't really been much explored, let alone even technology, because it was super hard to try and innovate anything in the legacy art world before coming into crypto art about 4 years ago, full time. And that opened up a super highway. So what I'm trying to say is that what's so interesting about the nexus of NFTs is that it liberates for us to express pretty much anything beyond sort of your government sort of ideas or ideology ideas or corporate ideas or whatever. You need to just contest with the market. And what I increasingly started noticing, that especially in the sort of more legacy, let's say now the art world, even though it's not even legacy, it's just since the 80s really art world, it's this very narrow bandwidth. So, and it started from this sort of Marilyn era of things. So we kind of made this art piece that presents of what's been inside of the Marilyn frame for a long time, and then all the things that are kind of like a carnival just waiting to get in from the outside. And this is why I kind of added there are some controversial characters to this for some people. I'm sure it's going to rub some people the wrong way, simply because it's all the characters that are, you know, for a reason or another, not allowed to be in the discussions that has been dominated the footnote after footnote of footnote in the legacy art world. So that's why you will all of a sudden start finding characters like, for example, Nikola Tesla or Jiddu Krishnamurti. You have Ayn Rand, you have Wayne Dyer, you have Ken Wilber, even the sort of what Fight Club presents from the monetary point of view. You have Sadhguru, who's someone who I listen to quite a lot now all the time when I paint. I find him incredibly inspiring. You have Jesus, then you go even Thomas Sowell. You have even the sort of classical bike ride there, without going too much into that, or Da Vinci's or Lao Tzu, or even many of these different ornaments found in these temples all over the world, and what they represent as ideas. And what this is really saying, I suppose, in some levels, is that even though the art world talks a lot about diversity and inclusion, it kind of glaringly tells you what it's not including. And that's, I would say at this point, the majority of life. And this is the contradiction where I'm sure there's some people who want to shoot the messenger to a relative degree, because it's in their interest to keep it in that slight, very narrow path that it's been on for the longest of times. But if NFTs stand for anything, if this whole liberation of a creative class stands for anything, then it must mean that people at some point are going to have the courage to start making and appreciating the thing that made the art, the word art, resonate with people, or out of reverence to begin with. These are many, many people who have inspired me along the way, not only on the inside of that Marilyn thing, but also on the outside. And I'm just wondering, what this art piece is presenting here is a kind of integral theory idea, is that they don't have to be mutually exclusive, and they don't have to pick sides as hard as they have right now. And this is the kind of thing of what I often want to portray with my art, is to try and do true inclusivity. And that's I'm all for all forms of life participating in our culture in every way that we can, and everyone needs support in order to be able to come and do this. But it's also just this expansion, I call it, or integration, or the true kind, where it's not only certain ideas that are allowed to be expressed, or certain people who are allowed to express these ideas. It's everyone's ball game, and it's our world and our culture to be created for a glorious future.